Welcome to another episode of Stronger Nurse News with your girl, Stronger Nurse. And I've also got my friend and senior recruiter at Epic Travel Staffing, Jeanine Dupron. So today we are going to talk about the end of travel nursing. Like, y'all see what the rates are doing. I mean, like, what are you going to do, right? So the biggest problem now is that hospitals are trying to find a way to circumvent travel nurses. And that is going to be through internal contracts. And guess what? My girl Jeanine, she's got all the, well, I'm not going to say answers, but she's got the lowdown on what's going on with what the hospitals are trying to do, because it directly affects not only us as travel nurses, but her as a recruiter too. So Jeanine, give us the 411 on what's going on.
Wow, I feel like Dr. Evil. Well, essentially what's happening is that there's a lot of facilities, and they're trying to cut costs as far as contractual agreements with what we know as the vendors, or what we call the VMS or MSP. That is what essentially they're trying to do. So in order to do that, they got to get a little creative. And in doing so, there are several systems specifically on the East Coast that are trying these out right now, but they're offering internal contracts before they're even offering them to the agencies to try to staff for them. Now, they're hoping that this helps them cut costs because they don't want to pay a finder's fee, essentially, or be in a contractual agreement with the vendor and have to play by their rules. So they're trying to, kind of go around or over or under, however the tunnel has to be built to get those staffing essential needs. Now, this can go a couple different ways. We have the first way, which is like a direct internal contract. They just kind of put it on their website or their bulletin boards, whatever, and then they interview you, and they may or may not hire you for that, and you sign a 3-month contract, and it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
There's pros and cons to everything, though, right? I look at them like housing mortgages, and I know that might sound a little like off base for people, but if you really think about it, every contract has its own little clause. There's pros and cons to everything. So it's kind of the same idea as your mortgage loans, right? You have an FHA, you have a conventional, you have the VA, and they all have pros and cons. So Let's look at the pros and cons of the direct contract with the facility. The first one, and the major one that I always look at, there's no tax-free money. Point blank, there's no tax-free money.
What?
You don't get any tax-free money in your line in your cushy little pockets anymore if you decide to go direct with them. Now, if the facility decides to hold their gun strong enough and long enough, they'll probably find someone to fill that role. The other thing is that you're in charge of working with that HR person one-on-one to get your compliance done. So I don't necessarily know. It might be like a facility thing, like every facility is different, but some of them might have resources where you don't have to pay out of pocket to comply. Some of them might not. And then you might also run into the ones that they're literally just winging it, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're just trying to figure it out. And you might be constantly in compliance throughout your assignment. Like, we don't know. Now, there's a couple other facilities. They're trying other ideas and approaches, such as almost like a per diem, but you would sign it as a per diem traveler with their system. So a great example would be like Kaiser, because Kaiser's huge on the East Coast and the West Coast, and they have pockets on the East Coast too. But say, for example, they're like, we're going to cut out AMN and we're just going to do travelers by yourself. Again, no tax-free money. Their main perk is that you can work when you want to. So if you're like, hey, I'm looking for work for 3 months, but I want to go to Oregon, they will let you go to Oregon because it's within their system.
Okay.
So you don't have to keep reapplying or keep, chasing down the next best thing. They have it all internal. So they're running it like that. And that works great, I guess, if you're on the East Coast, and they have some other places. I can't remember the facilities I was reading about off the top of my head, but they had establishments in Maryland, for example, and you come on to work 6 weeks or so, and you're like, you know what, I really want to go to Ohio. And then they'll say, great, we got a facility in Ohio, and they'll send you to Ohio to work for 6, 8, 12 weeks, whatever it is, and so on and so forth. But again, no tax-free money, no travel perks. You're going to have to worry about your own compliance, probably. Now, with all that said and all of the horror stories going on and all of the freak out, I do think things will start balancing out at some point where everybody will be in happy medium, but we probably won't see it for a little bit while longer. And I say that because the Bureau of Statistics of Labor themselves, they're already predicting in the next 5 or 6 years that the job demand for registered nurses is going to be well over 500,000. Like it's not even a contest. So yes, I understand that the facilities are trying to save money like everything else, but I mean, everybody sees it. We have lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit for patient care. There's a bill on the floor right now for ratios, patient ratios to get established in every state. And if you don't know what that is, Google it, go sign the petition. I already signed. And that's going to increase that, right? Supply and demand, because we all know whoever's been in nursing long enough knows that we have baby boomers on the way out. We got the blood, sweat, and tears, like the people who put in the elbow grease. And then we got the diehards who are literally about the heart of it. And then we got the people who are about the money, and they come for 3 years and then they hate their life and they leave.
Yeah.
So we have all of those things making the perfect storm, and it's just a matter of a time for it to balance out. Travel nursing, I don't think will ever go anywhere. I think we will have moments of very tight competitiveness, like right now, like what we're seeing, and we're going to see rates continuously fluctuate forever. But for it to be completely gone, I don't think that's ever going to happen. They don't have the bandwidth to do it. I mean, I just read about one in, I think it was Mississippi or Louisiana, might have been Alabama, one of those down there. And it was a hospital trying to figure out how to cut costs. And they signed an agreement with some local agency to bring in local travelers. But a majority of their people that they were working on, they're bringing in international people from Africa and the Philippines and so on and so forth. And while that's great, because we all know we need the support, we need a lot of nurses. At the same token, it kind of does, not help, because we all know they're getting not as well paid. Right. But to them, I mean, I don't work on the international side, so I can't really tell you about that. For all I know, they could get housing for the entire contract. I have no idea. They could get different perks as well, so it might work for them. Okay. But as far as like the true traveling and coming with me kind of thing, where you get your tax-free bonuses and stuff like that, that's only with me. You're not going to get that going internal. Now, I have had instances where people do contracts with me and they've stayed for like a year or so, and then the facility is trying to bring them on as staff and they don't want to. So what they'll do is they'll extend them, but on an internal extension. They absolutely refuse to give it to the vendors or agencies. Okay. And so the only way that nurse can stay there is if she goes on an internal contract. I have had those instances, and at some point, they go somewhere else or they do become staff, but I have had those too. So I think I've covered all the bases to my.
So as far as it goes, you said they're trying to hire international nurses as well for like to fill their needs. Mm-hmm. Okay. I still find that as BS, because honestly, you know how long it's going to cost them a lot more money, and it's going to cost a lot of time. I trained international nurses at the hospital that I was at. But I mean, I get it. They're trying to cut costs. A lot of hospitals are going bankrupt and everything. But like, don't you think CEOs could cut their costs?
I don't know what CEOs get paid, but probably somewhere. But for the international side of things, they come in on 3 or 5 year contracts. So they might come in, you're training them or whatever, but they're there for 5 years. They're locked and loaded. And, part of their deal is usually something to do with citizenship or something of that nature, or they get their sponsorship from the facility, which can cost a lot. And I only know that because I used to staff IT, and there's a lot of IT people from overseas that have to come over on special visas and things of that nature. So, it really depends.
Okay. So you said the compliance is also a problem as well. So you said they would only have to deal with one HR person, hoping that they remain in compliance through the majority of their assignment. Because I know one thing, and you don't work.
Well, I'm just going off what I've heard from people who've done internal contracts, and they usually have a really great system and maybe some support within the HR team, but that's not always the case, especially if you're going to smaller places. And then they might just say, here's a list, go get it done and come back, when it's done type thing, or when you have everything, but at which point you're paying out of pocket. I mean,
hold on, what?
A lot of different ways, I'm sure,
You said pay out of pocket. What do you mean? Like
your clinic visit, if you need to get like updated titers, drug screens, things of that nature.
That don't make no sense. Hold on. So they're gonna make a nurse pay to get a job at the hospital, and that's another way that they're cutting costs to shift the expenses onto the nurse to be able to work for them.
Right. Unless they have it set up internal for you to use their employee health. But in a lot of cases, like I'm not even allowed to send my travelers to employee health half the time. Half the time I have to use our own resources, which is why we have like an internal compliance team.
Gotcha.
With contractual agreements with whatever. I can't think off the top of my head. Quest.
Okay. I got you. All right. Yeah. So that's where part of the bill rate comes from, is like paying for the compliance. I know as far as the travel assignments go through every agency.
Right. That's worked into the like those margins we were talking about last time. Like the pie that goes to the agency, like that's worked into there.
Okay. Makes sense. So right. I don't really like that. So you said there were some cons to it. What are the cons to internal contracts? I mean, as far as them taking money away from your travel agency, I can definitely see like that is the con.
Right. Well, you just listed like some of them. There's no tax-free money. You have to pay for your own compliance. I mean, that to me, those two right there, I usually get stuck on. I usually don't have to go further than that because who wants to deal with all that? Beyond that, I have no idea. I mean, what if they have different contractual clauses? What if you're doing compliance the whole time? What if, one of the nice things that some of my travelers have told me that's nice about going with an agency is that if they have nurse cultural conflicts, like with the internal staff, because we all know that nurse culture could probably be better, especially very nicely. And like if there's issues, who do you go to? Right. You go to the staff, you go to their internal HR person. Like at least with an agency and a vendor or both, like you usually have some sort of buffer that can kind of be like the outlier. They can kind of like, help mediate it. Okay. But for some people that could be huge. I've had a couple of nurses that struggled, several different locations and before they found their niche.
Okay. So you said that there's an ability to float in between different hospitals though, but then floating between them, does that mean that you get paid the same? So let's say you work on the West Coast in Kaiser, and we know Kaiser in the West Coast pays like a lot more. And let's say you want to go to the East Coast where Kaiser is the rate the same or is it going to be different?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay.
They didn't say anything about that in the articles I read. I mean, okay. I have no idea. And I think that you were asking something along those lines before we had a technological default.
Difficulties.
But I have no idea. They didn't specify, but I probably not. They're probably going to tell you something like the perk is that you get to go anywhere you want. And, ideally they want to run all their systems the same, kind of like McDonald's, right? Like they're all ran the same. But we all know that doesn't work either. I mean, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I'm from Long Beach. There is nothing other than just being a human being. There's nothing the same where I live now in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Like we're talking two completely different cultural
right
in the way that people do things. And like, there's no way that, maybe they try their best, but I very doubt it.
Okay. Well, the statistic that stuck out the most to me though, is you told me it's going to be 500,000 nurses short. I was just listening to the news the other day and they were saying just the state of California alone is going to be 78,000 nurses short by next year. That's just next year. That's 1 year.
Right.
So yes, and like you said, the baby boomers, they are retiring, and they are not the healthiest
I
people.
have a nurse that's turning 72 this year. And
What?
she works night shift, and she's been traveling the last 20 years. And she literally told me, Jeanine, I think it's time I go to day shift. I think it just does better with me now. I'm like, you're 72. I hope so.
Jesus. She's not ready to quit. You know, she's like my mom. My mama told me she was gonna work till she died. And she is a travel nurse, and she's been doing it for well over 20 years. So yes. But she works days now. But nursing has definitely took her toll on her body. Like you said, that woman's one of them diehards that no matter what happens in the travel nurse, spectrum, the ups and downs of the shifts, she has literally made it.
She's probably seen a lot too, like, the ups and downs in the shifts through the industries and all that.
Right. Well,
I bet I would die to pick her brain just to hear her stories.
Well, maybe we should try and get her on one of our episodes on Stronger Nurse News and see what she's experienced in her 20-something years as a travel nurse.
What's her name? What's your mom's name?
Oh, my mom, her name is Nina, or as other nurses call her, No Nonsense Nina.
I was gonna say we call her Mama Nina. Like, Mama.
Yeah, we can definitely bring her on as a guest one time and have a conversation, because my mom, she's done quite a bit. She's been around the block, either there's per diem staffing. She's actually doing an internal contract at a hospital in Dallas, so she would actually be able to give a little bit more insight into that as well.
Does she make tax-free money with her internal contract?
No, not at all. It's all taxable. I mean, like the rate, I think she told me it's like $75 an hour or something like that was what she was getting. No benefits, no PTO, you know what I'm saying? Just like straight time, but she did get a completion bonus or something, like $5,000 or whatever for it. And she's done it like a couple of times because, like you said, the agency, they were cutting all agencies out and only going to seasonal internal contracts for like 3 months. And so that's
the thing about this is that a lot of the times, like, the rate is the same, regardless if you go internal or with your agency. So your rate might be taxed lower, but I mean, you're making tax-free money. And not for nothing, if we get into taxes one day, which I'm sure
we will,
you want your taxes to be lower because they take less over time. The more you make, the more they take.
Right. I mean, like I said, the game is to beat Uncle Sam at his own game. Right. I mean, like the least amount of taxes that you can pay, the more wealth you maintain at the end of the day. So, all right. So you've given us some hope that travel nursing will never end, essentially. And they can try all they want with these internal contracts. But guess what? Hospitals, you won't win. Nursing wins. Y'all need us more than we need you. But I do understand there's a shortage, and there's diehards like me who are just going to keep doing it.
Right. And I mean, we might even see an overturn of the ones who are doing it now later on. They might be able to do it now, or they think they have it figured out. Something happens. Lawsuits happen all the time. They change everything all the time. Maybe they thought they had a hold on compliance and they'd go strong for a year, and something happens and it turns out they never had a hold. The stories could go on and on and on. So I think because this did happen last year, it did come up when it was like, hey, we're starting to see these internal things pop up more frequently. And it was like, they literally went to some conferences, and some of them were like, yeah, no, wait, we'll just let it, we'll just let your agency do it. That's too much work for us or whatever. Because that is a lot of extra work on HR. Like, they don't got enough to do already, so.
Right. Well,
it's part of it, but
power to the hospitals. Okay. But really, I'm out here rooting for nurses and travel nursing in particular, because guess what? We need to win. So
only time will tell. And I always say this to everybody. You probably heard me say it, but I don't have a crystal ball. But if I did, I don't think we're going to see, I think the market's going to be kind of what it is right now for a little bit longer. And then we might see it uptick a little bit. But it probably won't be till next year sometime. And then I think it'll just kind of stay consistent again. But that's just my take on it. Only time will tell. I got to see what happens. We might have pandemic 5.0. I don't know.
Well, I guess we will just have to see. But your insight is always valuable. You do the homework, you do the research, you've got the time under your belt. So we can trust what you say, even though it's not crystal ball-y. I feel like it comes from a general place of good knowledge and understanding of travel nursing. Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. Okay. Well, this concludes our episode of Stronger Nurse News. At the end of travel nursing, internal contracts, yeah, right, hospitals. Guess what? Travel nurses, don't worry about it. Stick to your guns. We'll see you next time. All right. This is Stronger Nurse. Bye.